I want to truly be able to think from first principles about what does it look like to build marketing in an AI first way. Right now, it is about getting stuff done, building the team, blocking and tackling. And so that's why I say, like, don't bring in too much firepower early if what you really need is to get the work done.
Welcome to Human First. I'm your host, Danielle Parker, head of marketing at Captivate Talent. Hiring a marketing leader is one of the decisions that early stage founders are most likely to get wrong. Not because they don't care, but because they don't know what level of seniority to hire, they don't know really what they're looking for, and they've never worked in the function themselves. Add AI into the mix, and most founders are hiring to a bar that they haven't even defined. Today's guest has sat on both sides of the table recently, both as a marketing leader looking for her next role and someone who's now building out a team herself. Kathleen Booth is VP of Marketing at Sequel. She was former SVP at Pavilion. You've definitely seen her on LinkedIn, and she's someone who's built out marketing teams in multiple B2B tech companies over the last decade. Kathleen, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so excited to talk to you. Kind of been like a fan from afar for a while, so it's really fun to get to have you on the podcast. So thank you for being here with us.
Thanks for having me.
So I want to kind of jump right in on you recently moved jobs. You were SVP at Pavilion, and now you are VP at Sequel. Is it VP or CMO?
VP.
VP, okay. So now you're VP at Sequel, which is awesome, an awesome company to be at. You were really deliberate around your recent job search. Like, you wanted to go somewhere smaller where you could build this team from scratch. So what was behind that decision, and what were you seeing in the market at the time that kind of led you to make this jump?
Yeah, it was a really interesting moment in time. So it was late last summer, early last fall, and I feel like at that point, it was very clear that AI was going to be the massive sea change event that really, I think when we look back in 10 years, is going to be the inflection point for so many people. And when I had gone to Pavilion, I had come from B2B tech companies, SaaS. And Pavilion was an amazing experience. Like, it's funny because at the time I joined Pavilion, I had been in very late stage interviews with a PE-backed SaaS company. I was working with a recruiter. She was really bullish about me going into that role. And when I told her I was actually going to withdraw from the process and go to work at Pavilion, she was like, "That's a very strange choice. Why?" She didn't really know Pavilion, and she thought I was going. Yeah, she thought I was going to a trade association, and I was like, no, you don't understand. This is an amazing opportunity to be at the center of a network of the best go-to-market professionals that exist. And so it's kind of funny because that recruiter since has joined Pavilion and is a member. So it was an amazing 3 years, and I built an unbelievable network. I learned so much because I had exposure to all of these incredible operators. It was a wonderful 3 years. But what I saw last summer / early fall was that AI was going to change everything. And everyone was talking about, what does it mean to build AI first? And the thing that I was observing, both from my own experience, having run large teams at Pavilion and elsewhere, and through like conversations with people in the community, was that there's really two different challenges to building AI first. If you're in an organization that has an established marketing team, tends to happen in bigger companies, building AI first becomes really about change management and navigating the people challenge of, you've got an existing team, existing structures, reporting lines, swim lanes, etc. How do you like turn the ship so that it looks more like an AI first organization? And so much of that has to do with people and their willingness to accept change and change their own behavior.
It's a big cultural change.
Exactly. Versus like, if you go into a company where marketing isn't really established, you have the opportunity to work from a clean slate. And so what I really wanted it was kind of a big ask at the time. I was like, I really want to go someplace where marketing is not built out. It's not, I don't need to go somewhere where there's nothing, but I really don't want it to be about change management. I want to truly be able to think from first principles about what does it look like to build marketing in an AI first way. But, and this is a big but, I wanted to go someplace that had product market fit because
Yep.
I've done my share of startups. I was a founder. I've worked in lots of early stage companies. And when you don't have product market fit, sometimes marketing can feel like, throwing a bunch of darts at the wall and waiting to see what sticks. And I wanted to be able to focus on like truly what should excellent growth look like. And so the combination of those two things is hard to find. A place where marketing isn't really built out, but yet has product market fit. And I had been a customer of Sequel's. We used it at Pavilion. We did hundreds of virtual events every year. We rigorously vetted it and chose it and worked with it for 2 years. So I knew the product. And I had a chance to get to know Awana Manalach, who is the CEO and founder. And I was so impressed by her. And
She is
then,
absolutely fantastic. Just small
yeah.
caveat, like talk about the best kind of founder. I've
Oh,
had the privilege to get to interact with her a bunch, and she's just creme de la creme. So
she is a
small shout
marketer.
out.
Yeah, she's a marketer by training, which for my fellow marketing leaders out there can be a terrifying thing to work for a marketer because they come in two flavors. Either they want you to be a mind reader and just figure out what they wanted to do and do it, or they like love having you as a thought partner and it's a great thing. And I'm
Yeah.
fortunate that it's the latter. Um, but yeah, I mean, I knew her. I had a lot of confidence in her, and then I met with her, and she started to share some of the data around sequels, pipeline win rates, retention, and I was like, "Wow, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to move into a company that is exactly what I thought I wanted, which is has completely got product market fit, highly differentiated, amazing value proposition, super strong product, great founder." And marketing isn't really built out. So she had been leading marketing as the founder and was looking for her first head of marketing. And that's the very kind of long version of how I wound up
Yeah.
here and why it was such an exciting opportunity to me.
I love that. I feel like we always talk about like the unicorn candidate, but that's truly like the unicorn company at
So
like not
true.
like in terms of valuation, but like the opportunity, the role, the like time that you got
Yeah.
in. So it's really awesome to see. And I want to take a step back even before you were like in conversations with SQL because I think you did something really interesting. And that's why I'm also so excited to talk to you today is because we have like you are on both sides of the table. You are a marketing leader looking for your next role in an AI first company, and you're also a marketing leader who's built out teams, who's building out teams now, like looking at what that looks like in the new world. But something you did that was really interesting is you created what you called that the AI resume, um, which it was like a whole separate thing covering what you've built, how you think about it. So where did that idea come from, and how did you put that together?
Yeah. When I started exploring like what my next step would be after Pavilion, um, I began to talk with some of the executive recruiters I knew, and I had a conversation with one person who works with a lot of larger SaaS companies and told me that in every conversation he had had with a CEO in the last 6 months, about marketing leaders, the first question the CEO asked is, "What have they done with AI?" So when I heard that, I was like, okay, the good news is I've done a lot. We were pretty AI forward at Pavilion. We had some really interesting experiments. I had a great person in RevOps supporting me. And so that's where it came from. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to wait for them to ask me that question. I'm going to create a document that answers it before they even have a chance to ask it while they're still deciding if they even want to talk to me. Because if that's the first question, that's my entry point, right? Like I know I have a strong answer. So
Yeah.
my thinking was, let me get that right in front of them. So I built an AI resume separate from my main resume. So this wasn't like a version of my resume that emphasized AI. I had my resume and then I had a separate document that was
Yeah.
titled AI resume. And it was literally, these are the things I've done with AI. And some of them were things I had done personally. Some of them were things I had overseen within my team, but really wanted to just almost create an inventory of every use case that I had put in place when I was at Pavilion.
I love that. What was the reaction in some of the conversations that you had when you had like, traditional resume and then you were like, and gonna show you the real stuff.
Yeah, I think people really appreciated it. I mean, it like I said, it really just did answer the first question. And so I feel like it immediately built confidence in the CEOs I was speaking with that because I was coming in saying, look, what I'm looking for is an opportunity to build AI first. And it wasn't just words or platitudes. I was able to come into it saying, and here's what I've done so far, and here's the proof that I'm committed to this. But the other thing is that I noticed, and I've heard this a lot from CEOs and recruiters, is that a lot of marketing leaders right now are at this like juncture where they have to decide in future roles, do I want to be the marketing leader who is the strategic leader and the champion of the brand, overseeing the big team that does the work? Or do I want to be somebody who's willing to get in and do some of the work myself? And that seems to be the big kind of fork in the road with a lot of these job conversations that are happening. And I, not just in my experience, but when I was at Pavilion, and I'm still a member, being in the CMO channel and hearing what other people are saying about the conversations they're having, that was really the thing. And I heard it also from people at venture capital and private equity firms where they were almost complaining that too many CMOs didn't want to get their hands dirty anymore. And in this day and age, you need a marketing leader, particularly with AI, who's able to lead by doing in certain respects. And so it helped from that standpoint as well, where I was able to say, look, I am rolling my sleeves up. I am doing this. Now today, if I were to redo it, I'd say, here's my GitHub repo. You can see what I
Yeah.
built. I think the conversation has evolved even since then, and people are literally saying, show me your work, as opposed to just
Yeah.
show me the resume. But it definitely helped.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. That's when we hear so often is like the hands-on strategic leader is what everyone wants now. And they want a senior leader, but someone who's willing to get their hands dirty. And like, so I guess the question is, like, how do you figure out which one you actually need? Like, if you need the senior leader who's going to build that big team versus the kind of player coach who's going to get their hands dirty, where do you see each of those kind of profiles being useful?
I think it's really stage dependent. And where I think you see the tension most is in earlier stage companies that have big ambitions. Maybe they're venture backed and the pressure's on for them to dramatically grow in a very short amount of time. And they know they're going to grow quickly. And a lot of times they think, ooh, I need the big name. I want the person who's come out of that big logo company and they'll give me the credibility. I think a lot of times CEOs feel like the big name person has some sort of special sauce that someone else doesn't and knows how to grow. And
Yeah.
sometimes that might be the case, but I think all too often what they get when they think they want the big name or the big company brand, on the resume is they get somebody who knows how to be the brand spokesperson, knows how to operate at a very high executive level, can tell the great story, is a great leader of people, but isn't necessarily able to do what's needed at an early stage when you're not as fully resourced and where the playbook isn't already established. Because I think a lot of times when you come into big companies, very often there is a playbook that's working and you're running it, right?
Yeah.
And not always. I don't want to make statements that are too broad brush, but early stage as a CEO, you have to really think through and be realistic about how are you able and willing to resource your marketing leader? Because if you're not able to give them a complete team of people who are experts in the different areas of the work you need done, then the reality is that CMO or VP of marketing is going to have to do the work themselves. And and prove out how far they can get with AI. And that's what I came in to do when I started. We had been thinking about hiring a product marketer, and I said to Juana, let's not do it yet. Let's see how far we can get with me, the one demand gen person on my team who is exceptional, and all the AI, right? And that's what we've
Yeah.
done. And so now we're right now bringing on a product marketer, but it's 6 months in. And so what that allowed me to do is to actually run product marketing as a discipline, use AI to the extent possible to make it really efficient and scalable, and see where I started to run into the wall. And when that began to happen, I knew it was time to bring a person on. But what's great about that is now I can focus the person on the pieces that AI can't do well. And so just to go back to your original question, I think it's about being realistic about what you need and when you need it. And early stage, you have to really think through. If you don't have the resourcing, if you can't afford to simply have someone sitting in a leadership position and not doing the work, then you're probably looking for a VP and not a CMO. And by the way, that can be the same person. I've been a CMO a couple of times. I'm a VP right now, and that has nothing to do with moving backwards in my career or Not being ready, it's about the stage the company's at and the work we're
Hmm.
doing. Right now, it is very execution oriented. And as we grow, that role is going to change into more of a CMO role when it's more about telling the brand story and positioning us more within the category. But right now, it is about getting stuff done, building the team, blocking and tackling. And so that's why I
Yeah.
say, like, don't bring in too much firepower early if what you really need is to get the work done.
Yeah. That's a, like, that last sentence sums it up. Too much firepower when you just need someone to get it done. And I think that leads into my next question, where you've talked about this, what you call a high figure it out factor. So, like, people who are curious, they love picking problems apart. How do you distinguish that quality of someone who, does that in their day to day? It's part of who they are, versus someone, who might present as curious in an interview. Like, how do you dig in when you're looking for someone?
Yeah, I this is something I've been felt really strongly about for many years because I used to own an agency. And so when I would hire, we were small and I couldn't afford to hire people who needed to be handheld or who were going to be order takers and wait for me to tell them what to do. So I don't remember where this phrase came from, but we started calling this trait a high figure it out factor, which is like, if you don't know how to do something, you're the person who is like a dog with a bone. They're like, I am not going to let go of this until I figure it out. I'm going to go to Google. I'm going to go to YouTube. I'm going to chase down the answers. I'm going to tap into my community of peers. I'm going to ask everybody I know. Like, I am going to figure this out and master it. And it doesn't mean you can't ask for help. Like, as a leader, I do want people to come to me and ask for help, but I also don't want them to waste my time. Like, if the answer is available in Google, please go ask Google. I am not Google. You know what I mean? Like, and I
Yeah.
love I
Yeah.
love a
I've been in that
person.
position too.
Yeah, it's so super frustrating. And I truly love a person. The people who I think thrive most under my leadership are the ones who are not waiting to be told what to do or how to do it. And so they go out and experiment. They see an opportunity and they go out and they research and test and come to me and say, "Look what I did." And I love that. That's so great. And so how
Yeah.
do you test for that in hiring? Oh gosh, I think there's a couple of different ways. I mean, I'm a fan of behavior-based interview questions where they're framed more as tell me about a time as opposed to what would you do if. Hypotheticals, anyone can like use ChatGPT and come up with a great answer. But if you ask about a previous situation, tell me about a time when you were asked to do something that you didn't know anything about, and how did you go about figuring it out? I think those kinds of questions are really helpful. But I also think having a practical exercise as part of the hiring process is essential. And it's a controversial thing. Not everybody believes in it. I strongly believe in it. It's really helped me weed out candidates who weren't ready for the role, because anybody can script themselves through an interview. But if you're asked to do something on the fly, that is really a test of your ability not only to put into practice the skills you have, but to do it under pressure, to show that you're agile in figuring out answers, and to go solve it. And so I love doing that when it comes to AI. How do you test that? Like, I think there's really interesting ways we can do this now because people will use AI and we have to acknowledge that. But, for example, if they're using like ChatGPT, and I think you can do this in Claude too, they can share their conversation. And so you can say,
Oh, interesting.
I want to
Yeah.
see all the prompts you gave it and how you went back and forth with it and where you pressure tested what the AI gave you to come up with the final deliverable. So I don't want to just see the deliverable. I want to see literally the conversation you had with the AI to get to the deliverable. Because I do want people to use AI. Like I'm building AI first. Like that's an expectation. But I want to see how they're challenging it and the questions they're asking it and how sophisticated their prompt is.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I was actually catching up with Mark Roberge the other day, from Stage Two, and we were talking about this, and he was like about specifically like the case study or the prompt or whatever you want to call it, that stage in the interview, and he was like, so many people are like now like, okay, it all needs to be live, and he's like, no, like if you want them to use AI on the job, you want to see how they use it to prep, and then you use what they've taken, and then we were talking specifically about sales roles, and then like you push them the part where like AI can't help you if you're like in a
Yeah.
live situation. So I want to know a little bit more about like what your case studies or like the live, like what does that look like? Because it is a little controversial, especially in marketing. And I've seen both sides of the spectrum. I've seen like, okay, I remember interviewing for this role years and years ago where they were like, don't spend more than 2 hours on this, but we want you to basically, they asked me to build out their entire holiday marketing campaign for
Yeah.
like a real scenario. And I'd also like heard some sketchy things about them from some other people. So I just like withdrew from the process versus kind of the like, well, I don't want to do anything without getting paid.
Yeah.
So it is controversial.
Yeah. I mean, look, this, again, it may be controversial, but I don't want to do anything without getting paid. Personally, I feel like
Yeah.
maybe you're not right for my role then, because interviewing is a process and it does require work on your part.
Yeah.
And
Totally agree.
yet, if I'm going to put an exercise together and ask someone to complete it, I'm either going to not pay them, but keep the exercise very short and contained and set an expectation around how much time I want them to spend. Or if it's longer and more in depth, I would pay them. And either way, I would have it set on a hypothetical, because I think that's the part that marketers get really sensitive about, is if they're like, you basically had me build your marketing strategy and then you're going to go use it and you didn't hire me. Like, even if you
Yeah.
pay the person, that still feels kind of icky. And so I like
Yeah.
creating a hypothetical and putting the assignment against that. And then, and again, then just putting guardrails on it and making sure, like, if I think it's reasonable to expect people to spend an hour to 2 hours on an exercise. Like, that's how long you should be
Yeah.
preparing for an interview anyway. And if you're not willing to do that without getting paid, I think that says something culturally about you. And there are some companies that might like that. I just personally don't think that's the right fit for the team that I'm hiring for.
Yeah, and it's about those like setting those expectations and like the cultural fit. So that is kind of like a good test. And I totally agree with you there. It's like it's a two-way street. Got to put in the effort there.
Yeah, and I mean, I think everyone should acknowledge that today it's not really fair to think that a potential employer can effectively evaluate you if all they're doing is asking you questions in a verbal interview. Because again, you could script out answers to every potential question and have them so polished and be reading off of a ChatGPT script or a Claude script. The exercise is the one area, either that or a live role play. Those are like the only areas where we have an opportunity to really understand, are you right for the position, and to test your skills. And so I think it's fair to expect that that would be a part of the process.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you. Yeah, so this is actually a really good segue into the nuance we're talking about, where it's not just whether someone uses AI, it's whether they still kind of own the outcome, think strategically. So how do you get in? And this is kind of the tension we're seeing between some of the roles in like that balance between AI capability and then like the core marketing fundamentals you need. So how are you thinking about that?
Yeah, it's such an interesting question. And I feel like right now, I have a lot of strong feelings about this, because I feel like right now people are wasting a lot of time trying to play detective and sniff out AI usage just for the sake of being able to say, gotcha, you used AI, right? People are like, ooh, I saw an M dash. You must have produced this with AI.
Don't
And
even get me started about the M dash.
I just think it's such a waste of time. We are spending our time on the wrong things. Like, forget about M dashes, forget about all that stuff. Hold people accountable for the ideas and the work product, right? Like, if the work product is good, if the ideas are good, then great. Who cares if there's an M dash? M dashes are often grammatically correct. Like, don't force people to dumb down their work to hide AI usage. That's really stupid. But I think you're right. Like, and I've said this in my newsletter. So I write a weekly newsletter about what I'm doing at SQL, building AI first. And I recently had an issue about this where it's like people have to own the outcomes, but you also have to own the inputs. And I've always called this like a bookend strategy. And it's how I think about AI. To use AI well, you really need to start by giving it all of yourself that you can. And I love voice to text tools for this. People must think I'm crazy because I'm often walking around talking into my phone, just brain
Oh my
dumping.
God, I'm doing that all the time.
Of consciousness, like
Yeah.
on my walks with my dogs in the grocery store. If an idea comes to me, I'm like, I need to tell it to my AI immediately.
Yeah.
And it's like verbally vomiting, for lack of a better term. It's not ordered information. It isn't polished, but you just need to get the ideas out of your head and into the AI. And as part of that, I believe you need to give it a point of view, right? This is what you're being hired for, is your point of view. Now, You should ask AI to pressure test that, to challenge it, to question it, but you should start with your point of view. And then you can use AI to help package all of your thoughts, to distill them, to polish the way they're expressed. Again, to challenge the point of view, and that'll help you hopefully strengthen it. Sometimes it might help you completely change your point of view because it might challenge you in ways that get you to think differently, but it'll help you come up with a first draft, right? From your
Yeah.
initial inputs. And then on the other end, this is the other side of the bookend, you need to review that draft and make sure it's really you. Make sure it sounds like you. Make sure it truly reflects what you think and what you believe. Question the very confident statements that it makes. I
Yeah.
love when it like cites research studies and then you say, show me where you got this data, and it can't find it. Um,
Hmm.
and so
Yeah. It's very convincing
ugh, it is the
in
most
its
confident liar.
citations. The most confident liar. I had that when I was doing the salaries report at Exit 5, and we hired an actual data scientist to help go through, and that was the right call, because I was waiting for that, and I was just like curious, and I popped it into Claude and was like, I'm just going to see what it comes up with.
Yeah.
And I was like, help me, like, gather some insights, gave it the context, blah blah blah, gave it the data, and it was like, oh yeah, and as expected, men are getting paid more than women. I was like, that's really interesting, because that data didn't have gender in it. So now I don't trust anything.
Oh God, that's terrible. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, that's exactly it. It like gives you this information. It cites statistics
It's
sometimes.
so confident.
And it's like just flat out fabricated. So
Yeah.
you have to check it. And I think that's part of why, like with the people you're hiring or people who report to you, you do have to ask them, like, how did you come up with this conclusion? Walk me through your thinking. That's where you can say, hey, share your prompt conversation with me so I can see exactly the process you used to get to this. Like, I think that's super interesting because that speaks to like how lazy are they being, and or how sophisticated are they with their use of AI? Because bad inputs are going to produce bad outputs. And so we do need to understand like how the sausage is being made in this case.
That's super interesting. And that's not something I've heard before. So that's a really good tidbit on testing how they're thinking. Because, like, yeah, the output will probably look perfect, but you want to see how they got
Yeah.
there. And this comes to it. I feel like we're at very interesting points in our career between AI fluency and these core marketing fundamentals. And I think sometimes there's like the use of AI as a shortcut to kind of approximate those core fundamentals. And they're really AI fluent, but maybe don't understand the structure behind that. So how are you thinking about that? Like, if you had to choose between someone who's like brilliant marketer, but like totally not new to AI, doesn't really know what they're doing, they're maybe a little like cautious and hesitant, versus someone who's like knows AI like the back of their hand, but they're a little shallower on the marketing discipline, how would you approach kind of both of those people?
That's a really hard question because I think it
I
depends
know.
on the role. I do think there are certain things that you don't need as much marketing expertise for, but if you have AI fluency, you can just move incredibly fast. Like marketing operations is a great example of that. And also it depends like who you can pair the person with, right? Like if I have one person who's really good at marketing and one person who's really good at AI, put them together and it's the dream team. I mean, obviously the dream state is you get a little bit of both. But I do think that you still need to have core marketing fundamentals. And it's the digging into that a little further. I'm looking for people that really understand human psychology and are interested in the nuance underneath marketing because as AI becomes more prevalent, I'm a big believer in it. We're leaning into it, but I also really believe in solving for humans. And this is like the whole premise of my newsletter, also is like, human first brand, AI first growth. I think AI can help us architect growth, but at the heart of it, the brand needs to be human. And the way we connect with our audiences needs to be human. And so I'm looking for marketers that understand that delicate balance and that are not going to accept AI output that removes the humanity from things. Um, so I don't know if that answers your question, but that's
No,
what
that
I'm
does.
looking for.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And I think that you do see that tension right now in a lot of marketing, and kind of we're all figuring it out,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And there's just a lot of bad marketing out there with people who are allowing AI to run things for them. And it's It's like a dumbing down that's happening. So the people that are willing to, I guess the phrase would be pattern interrupt. We talk about that a lot at SQL. Like, what can we do that's a pattern interrupt? Because AI is great at patterns. And if everybody's
Yes.
following the same patterns, then there's a concept in marketing and advertising called banner blindness, which means you
Mm-hmm.
stop seeing it, you stop hearing it. That's what's happened with email. I have, in the last year, the strongest takeaway I've had from what's changed in marketing is email is like really stopping working. It's not dead. I'm never going to say it's dead. Nothing's ever dead. People who say things are dead are wrong, but it's dramatically less effective because there is just a mass banner blindness happening with people when it comes to email because we're flooded with so much of it. AI has made it so easy to produce it at scale, to personalize it at scale, that we're just shutting down. And I know myself when I go into my email in the morning, it's just delete, delete, delete. Like I'm not even looking at these things because there's just too much. And so the pattern interrupt is the real opportunity. If you can find marketers who understand the power of that and who are clever at figuring out how to do it and think outside the box, that's an amazing asset to have on your team.
Yeah. Ugh, yeah, those are the best kind of marketers. I love that, and think you're very lucky at SQL to find those people.
We have some great pattern interrupters.
Yeah. So I think getting into a little bit more about like founders and approaching the marketing hire, and Alana's obviously the dream. um, and you've talked about this before, kind of the disconnect you see from founders who say they want the CMO, but they describe that senior director, maybe that VP. And we talked about this a little bit earlier. Why does that mismatch happen so often? And, what do you think it costs a company and a founder that's at like an earlier stage of growth?
Well, the question about why does it happen, I think has to do with assumptions that founders make. If you don't know a lot about marketing and, you're a technical founder or you come out of sales or what have you, and especially if you're looking at this world we're living in today where you have these AI native companies that are growing at astounding rates, or you have these large SaaS companies that have gotten huge over time and they have these big name CMOs, it can be very tempting to think, again, like I said earlier, that that person who's leading that team is privy to some secret that is the key to unlocking growth. They must know something I don't, is what I think a lot of founders think. And most marketers, and I've talked to a lot of them. This was one of the greatest things about my time at Pavilion is I talked to a
Yeah.
lot of them. What you will learn is yes, those people are incredible, they're accomplished, they're smart. Um, and also, many of them will tell you they got lucky because they were someplace that just had an amazing product. And this is part of why I was so adamant about finding someplace with product market fit in my latest move, because I'd heard it so many times. People saying, look, I'd love to claim to have some secret, but I work for a company where the product sold itself. And that is magical when you can find it. I feel like I found it here. And if you ever get that opportunity in your marketing career, jump at it because a really strong product makes up for so many other things. Just like the best marketing in the world cannot make up for a product that is not strong or that lacks product market fit. And so I think a lot of times these founders look at those marketing leaders that have been through that journey, seen that kind of growth, and they think it was the person that drove the outcome. And they don't recognize that a large part of what drove that outcome was the product. Um, and so,
Yeah. And they
they
kind of think that the person is the band-aid for the product market fit piece.
Yeah, and that's not the case. And so you have to understand, like, if you are early stage and you don't have product market fit, your marketer isn't going to find it for you. Your marketer is going to help you test and experiment and figure out which channels are going to get you the best traction while you look for it. But you still need to have a product that is the right offering for the market. Again, the marketer can help with that, but they aren't going to solve it. And so early stage, if you need somebody who's an experimenter, who's a growth hacker, who's really agile, who can move quickly and test different things and have a lot of experiments going, that is a different person than the enterprise marketer who's running a team, who needs consistency, who has the resources. And so I think that's really the crux of the challenge, is recognizing, like, what you need at the stage you're in and finding the right person for that.
And that goes into another temptation we see for founders where they reach for the person with that big brand because of the name on their resume. And like you're saying, like they think that the person has some magic or some secret. And, it's the wrong call really at seed or series A. And like, what does a better fit actually look like at that stage? Maybe is it like more the like figure it out ability that you spoke about earlier? And how do you kind of identify that person?
Yeah, and I don't wanna say that the person at the big company is never the right person for an early stage company, because there are definitely marketers out there who they're rare, but who have, like, made the journey from early marketing hire all the way through to large company. Like, a great example of this is Kip Bodnar at HubSpot. Kip has
Yeah.
been at HubSpot since, like, the very, very beginning, and the fact that he is now the CMO absolutely blows my mind every time I think about it, because how you survive and grow and thrive as a leader from scrappy startup all the way through to publicly traded company is an unbelievable feat. And a
Yeah.
very small club of people can claim to have done that. But they exist. They're out there. And definitely there are some people who have been through the journey, who have gone to the larger company, but who still like have a love for the early stages when it's very entrepreneurial. So you have to suss that out in the interview process and really figure out, is this person, do they have the energy for the early stage when they're not going to be resourced, when they're going to have to do the work? Are they going to be able to drive results without asking for more budget or headcount? Are they going to get, experimental, et cetera? So I think those are the kinds of questions you need to be asking.
Yeah. I think I kind of can already anticipate your answer to this one, but we work with a lot of founders and, a lot of the founders listening to this are probably not marketers. We, see a lot of index on product or technical, but they know they need to hire their first marketing leader. What is the most important thing they need to be honest with themselves about before even like getting into the search process?
Budget and results. That is the first thing that a good marketing leader will ask you about is what they'll ask you what success looks like, and usually that's in terms of like what amount of pipeline do you expect me to drive for the company, and what budget are you going to give me to do that? And if there is a real mismatch between those two, and you see this so often in early stage, especially first time founders, where they're like, oh, we're going to triple, triple, double, double, but I'm not going to increase your budget. Like that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
You
You
know,
have AI now. You should be able to do it.
right, exactly. That is not going to happen. You're looking for a magician, not a marketer.
Yeah.
So that's the number one thing is you just and there needs to be a formula behind it, by the way, because the next question they're going to ask you when you say this is the budget is they're going to say, how did you come up with that number? And show me the logic you used to determine that by giving me this much additional money, it's going to produce that result. And usually what you find with founders is they've made up a number. And a good marketing candidate is going to come back to you and say, okay, let's break it down together. Let's do a little data exercise where we look back at historically what's driven your pipeline and how much it has cost you to drive those results. And then let's extrapolate from that on what might be possible. And we can factor in some efficiency and some, magical marketing dust sprinkled on top or whatever. But there needs to be data behind those assumptions, and they need to be realistic, even if they are a bit challenging. And so I think expect to be challenged if you're a founder. And if you're not challenged, that might be a red flag.
I think that's great advice. This one is a favorite question because it's happened to me before. So you're at dinner, you're at a fun dinner, maybe some founders there, and they're like, we need to find a great marketer. How do we find someone like you? How do you answer that question?
Oh boy.
I know, it's one of my favorite ones. Like, what are one of the 2 or 3 things you'd actually tell them? I actually had this conversation with someone yesterday, which was
If they
funny.
were
So,
asking how to find somebody like me, that's probably a different answer than how do you find a great marketer? Because I
yeah,
wouldn't
how
say
to find someone like you.
so somebody like me, I mean, I would say that what makes me me, first of all, is I mean, a lot of people know me from my LinkedIn presence, which I think is so funny because I'm really introverted. but it's become a thing. But what makes me truly me, and what I like and what I thrive with in terms of marketing roles, is I do love the earlier stages of marketing, which doesn't mean I only ever want to work in early stage companies. It means I like the fast pace and the growth. I would not do well in a company that was overly bureaucratic, slow to make decisions, and that had like existing processes in place. I once interviewed for a PE-backed company and was told, if you work for a company in this particular PE's portfolio, you're going to have to just use their growth system. They have a playbook, you're going to have to implement it. And I was like, no, thank you. I'm out. So that's just me. Like, there are marketers who've gotten amazing results working in that kind of a system and who are great at it and who love it. And that's awesome. But I'm a person who likes the creativity, the innovation, the fast moving pace of an early stage company. And so I think you have to look for people that are passionate about those things, but who also understand what it means to build a team, to create a solid foundation that's going to sustain growth. And I think the most important thing is you have to look for somebody that you can personally work well with and trust. And I talk about this all the time with my CEO, which is that, like, I could be the best marketer in the world, but if she doesn't trust me, if we don't communicate well and communicate honestly, it really doesn't matter. That is the number one success factor, in my opinion, between CEOs and CMOs, is the trust and the relationship. And so you have to look for somebody that you feel that for.
Yeah, I think that's a really underrated one too.
Absolutely.
You really need. So for any founder who's listening who maybe hasn't made that first marketing hire yet, maybe they're, 3 to 6 months away, what's something they should be doing right now to prepare for that before thinking about the job description, like even, engaging a recruiter, starting to work their network? What's, one quintessential thing you would tell them to do?
Oh, that is a really good question. I think you should be doing your homework on what you think your targets are that you're going to ask this marketer to hit. Like, what is the definition of success for the role? And doing your research to back that up with data, to have that data ready. You should have a perspective on how much information you're willing to share on the company. A good candidate's going to ask to see board decks, financials, and they'll sign an NDA, they'll do all of those things. But it's almost like putting a data room together for your hire.
Yeah, that's
I
it.
would
Yeah.
get all that together, and then I would really start to think about, what aspect of marketing does this person need to have as their superpower? Because very often in interview processes, when I've been interviewed, I'm typically asked, are you more of a demand gen leader, a brand marketer, or a product marketer? Those tend to be the main three areas that a company needs somebody to excel in. And the person that excels in one of those is very different than the person that excels in the others. And so you have to understand what you need at that stage in time. So if you're really early stage and you don't have product market fit, you're not looking for a brand marketer. Certainly, you may be looking for product or demand gen. It just depends on whether your focus is more on demand experiments and trying to figure out the channels, or if it's like really being able to translate. If you think you've got a great product, and it's being able to educate the market about that and explain what it is you do and how that solves people's problems, that's probably more of a product marketer. And so I think just knowing, like, what is the real problem that you need to solve first is going to help you figure out how you want that marketing leader to index. Do you want them to be more indexed on product marketing, on brand, on demand? That'll help you go into those interviews with a much better sense for what you're looking for.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you so much, Kathleen. Like, this was amazing episode. I have so many nuggets I'm going to want to keep coming back to. So yeah, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun to talk about.
Yeah, this was great. Kathleen, thank you so much for joining us today. And one thing I keep coming back to from this conversation is the gap between what founders think they need in an early stage marketing hire and what they actually need. And taking a step back to be really honest with themselves about if they have product market fit and what the right marketing leader for their stage actually looks like. If you want to follow Kathleen's work, you can find her LinkedIn and her newsletter in the show description notes. If this episode was useful, please like, share, and subscribe, or share with a founder or revenue leader that you think would benefit from it. We'll see you next time on Human First.